beautiful people, welcome to Remi's Fashion. My name is Remi. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to draft a skirt pattern. Drafting a skirt pattern is an exciting process. It allows you to create a unique custom fit skirt with just a few supplies. I'm going to draft the pattern stroke block. I'm not going to add any sewing allowances or hem allowance. I will draft the pattern and I can use it for different skirt variations. I can increase the length of the skirt pattern to suit the type of skirt I need to draft at any particular time. Then I can add my sewing allowances and my hem allowance. To get started, you will need the following supplies. You will need pattern paper, a pencil or pen, rulers, straight ruler, curvy ruler. You will also need to take some measurements of your hips and waistline, as these will be used to determine the size of the pattern pieces. Once you have your supplies ready, it's time to begin drafting. On the screen are the measurements that I'm going to be using. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is to create a box. I'm going to be using this box to draft my front and back patterns. I will use my hip circumference because that is the largest part of my lower body. My hip circumference is 47 inches. And by the time I divide that by 2, it's going to give me 23.5 inches. So I will divide my box into 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have a starting point on this side on my vertical line to take all my horizontal measurements. So I'm going to draw out a starting point on this side before I create the box. So I'm going to measure 23.5 inches horizontally. This is going to be my starting point for all my vertical measurements. And I'm going to use this to create the box as well. So 23.5 inches. And this is the biggest part of my hip because my hip circumference is 47 inches. By the time I divide that by 2, it gives me 23.5 inches. And the length of my skirt is going to be 25 inches. I'm just going to be drafting out this length. So with this length, I'll be able to increase my skirt whenever I want. If I want it to be very long, I can just increase it. That is the main reason why I'm not going to be adding any hem allowance. I'm not going to be adding sewing allowances as well, because I want to do that when I take the skirt and I want to make any skirt variation. This is the pattern I'm going to be using. Then if I want it longer, I can increase it. So I'm going to be using this front and back pattern pieces. I need the length of my skirt to be able to draw out my box. And the length of the skirt I'm drafting is 25 inches. So I'll mark 25 inches. So this is my box. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this box into 2. And then I'm going to be using one side for the front pattern and the other side is going to be for the back pattern. The width of this box is 23.5 inches. So by the time I divide that by 2, it's going to give me 11.75 inches. So I'm going to measure 11.75 inches to divide the box into 2 for both the front and the back. 11.75 puts me here. So this is the box that I'm going to be drafting my skirt patterns, both the front and the back. So now the next thing is to decide where you want to be your front and where you want to be your back. I want this part to be my front pattern. This is where I'm going to be drafting my front pattern. And then this is where I'm going to be drafting my back pattern. So I'm going to label. I'm going to put CF here. This is my center front. I'm going to put it on the inside because I'll be cutting out the back. And this side, this is going to be my sides. So this is going to be my side. This is my side front, and then this is my side back. And then here is going to be my center back. This is my waist. So just make sure you put waistline here. Waistline for both the front and the back. So this is my waistline. This is the length line. This is the length line. I'm going to put it there. Length line. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to take my measurement from my waist to my hip. From my measurement, my waist to my hip is 9 inches. So I'm going to measure 9 inches from the waist. 9 inches puts me here, I'll mark. So I'll do the same thing for the back. And then I'll draw a line to connect all my points. So I'll just draw this horizontal line to connect all my points. And this is my hip line. I'm just going to put it there, hip line. I'm going to be drafting the front pattern first. After drafting the front, then we can now draft the back pattern. So the next thing I'm going to do is to measure out my waist circumference. And then I have already done my calculations. My waist circumference is 38 inches. And by the time I divide that by 4, it's going to give me 9.5 inches. I'm going to add 1 inch dart allowance because I'm going to be having that in my skirt. Okay? So 9.5 inches plus 1, that's going to give me 10.5 inches. I'll measure 10.5 inches. And I'm measuring from my center front towards the side. So 10.5 inches. That puts me here and I'll mark. So the next measurement is my hip circumference measurement. Remember, we used the widest part of our lower body, which is my hip circumference. This is what we use in getting this box. So just to confirm that 11.75 is correct. And by the time I take my measurement to find out whether it's correct, you see 11.75. This is correct. This is my side. So from the waist, I'm going to connect to my hip. So I'm going to connect like this from the waist to the hip. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the waist shaping for the front. From the waistline, I'm going to go down half an inch on the center front. This is my center front. So I'm going to measure half an inch down. I will mark. And then from here, I'm going to connect to the circumference. So this is my waist shaping for my front. So the next thing I'm going to do is to place my dart on my pattern, okay? And for that, I'm going to be using my bust span measurement, which is also known as nipple to nipple measurement. Mine is 8 inches. And by the time I divide that by 2, will give me 4 inches. So I'm going to measure 4 inches from my center front. 4 inches. 4 inches puts me here, I'll mark. So the length of my dart for the front is going to be 4 inches. So I'm going to measure 4 inches down, and that puts me here. So I'm going to draw a straight line to connect the points. And this is the length of my dart, which is 4 inches. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to draw out my dart legs. The width of my dart is 1 inch. Remember, we included the 1 inch allowance on the waistline. So I'm going to measure 1 inch. So it's going to be half an inch on each side. Half an inch on each side, which is a total of 1 inch. So half an inch here, and then half an inch here. So when you check the measurement, that's 1 inch. So for me to be able to draw out my dart legs, I'm going to be drawing this out straight just to square it up. And remember, this is my waist shaping. I'm going to be cutting off this. And you do not want to draw your dart diagonal all the way from the top to the bottom, because once you cut it off, the shape is going to be distorted. So that is why I am doing this. So square it up, and then you now draw your darts. And this is my dart legs. So the next thing I'm going to be working on is my length line. I want to give my pencil skirt a shape. I want it fitted at the bottom. You can leave it like this if you just want a normal skirt. But if you want a pencil skirt, you can now take the measurement of our hip circumference. Mine is 11.75. 11.75 inches. I'm going to subtract 1.5 inch. And that's going to give me 10.25 inch. It all depends on how fitted you want your skirt to be. I want mine fitted, so I'm going to be taking out 1.5 inch. From my hip line, I'll measure 1 inch down. I'll measure 1 inch down. And then I will now connect from this point to this point. So I'm going to be doing that for both the front and the back patterns. So this is our front pattern, all done. For this front, you're going to be cutting it on fold. So you're just going to indicate this is going to be on fold. And this is going to be my grain line. This is our front pattern. And then for the front pattern, I'm just going to write front pattern, front skirt pattern. For this, I'm going to be cutting 1. Remember, we're putting it on fold. Once I put it on fold, I cut 1. I open it up. I have for both sides. So this is our front pattern completed. So the next thing we're going to do now is we're going to draft the back pattern. So the next thing we're going to do now is to draft the back pattern. And then with the back pattern, I'm going to be taking my measurements from the center back towards the sides. Remember, for the front pattern, I took my measurements from the center front towards the sides. That's exactly what I'm going to do for my center back. So the first thing I'm going to do for the center back is the back contouring. From the center back, I'm going to go in 3/8 of an inch. 3/8 of an inch, and then blend it down 7 inches. The reason why I want to contour the back is to prevent us from having the bulge you usually see at the back of some skirts. So I want us to prevent that. So I do not want to have that. So that's why it's necessary for you to contour the back. I'm going to measure 3/8 of an inch inwards from the center back, and that puts me here. And then I'm going to go down by 1/2 an inch, and I'm going to be using this 1/2 an inch for the back waist shaping as well. So I'm going to go down 1/2 an inch. So after going down by 1/2 an inch, I will now measure 7 inches downwards. 7 inches downwards. And that puts me here. I'll mark. And then I'm going to blend it in. This is going to be a straight line. And this is where my waist shaping is going to be starting for the back. And then from here, I'll just blend it in to the 7 inches down here. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the waist circumference for the back. Like we had in the front, the waist circumference measurement is 9.5 inches. And then I'm going to add 1 inch dart allowance. And that 1 inch dart allowance is going to give me 10.5 inches. I'm still going to draw from here. I'm going to measure from the edge 10.5 inches. That includes my dart allowance. I'm going to be measuring from the center back towards the side. So 10.5 inches puts me here, and I'll mark. But because we just deducted 3/8 of an inch for the back contouring, we will now reduce the back dart by that 3/8 of an inch. That is 1 inch, which we use for the front. If I minus 3/8 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch is 0.375 inch. That is going to give me 0.625 inch. And that is 5/8 of an inch. So our back dart is going to be 5/8 of an inch instead of 1 inch, because we've already removed an amount from here. And then we want the front and the back to align. We want them to match each other. So you have to make sure the width is the same, both for the front and the back. So we take out 1 inch here, but because we've contoured here and we've taken out some from here, so whatever we took out from here, so whatever you take out from here, you make sure you take it out from the darts for the back. Once you take that out, the circumference you have for the front and the back are going to be equal. So our back dart is going to be 5/8 of an inch wide. And the length of the dart is going to be 3.5 inches because it's not as wide as 1 inch. So I'm going to shorten the length. So I'm going to be using my bust span measurement. That's nipple to nipple, which is 4 inches. So I'm going to measure it from my center back. 4 inches puts me here. So 4 inches I will mark. And the length of my dart is going to be 3.5 inches. So 3.5 inches puts me here. And I'll draw a straight line to connect my points. So this is 3.5. This is 3/8. In here, that's 3/8. 3/8 of an inch. And the dart itself is going to be 5/8 of an inch. So this one is 1 inch. So that's the width of the dart. Okay? So since my dart is 5/8 of an inch, so half of 5/8 of an inch is 5/16. So I'm going to measure 5/16 on one side and 5/16 on the other side. That's going to give me a total of 5/8 of an inch. So I'll mark that there. So but before I draw out the dart legs, I'm going to do my waist shaping. So for the waist shaping for the back, I went down by 1/2 an inch here. So I'm going to go in by 3/4 of an inch. So I went in by 3/4 of an inch. I'm just going to draw a straight line. From this 3/4 of an inch, I'm going to connect it down to my circumference measurement. Like this. So this is my waist shaping for the back. So the next thing I will need to do now is to complete drawing out my dart legs. So I'm going to square this down like I did for the front. Square it down. And then I'll draw out my dart legs now. So this is my dart for the back. So for the back, I'm going to measure 1 inch for my zipper allowance. So because I've already done this contouring, I can now measure 1 inch from this shape for my zipper allowance from this waist shaping from here. So I'll follow the shape all the way down. So this is out. So when I'm cutting out, this is what I'm going to be cutting, and this is my zipper allowance. So the next thing I'm going to do is, just like I did for the front, at the bottom, I'm going to do the same thing. I'll take out 1.5 inch and I will connect to the hip line. And then I'm going to measure 1 inch down from the hip line. And then I'll connect. I'm going to write my labels and then I'm going to through my darts just to make sure I have the right shaping, okay? For the back as well, this is going to be our grain line. So this is my back pattern. I'm going to cut to back skirt pattern. And then don't forget to add in your notches. So the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to through the darts both for the front and the back. So by truing, I want to make sure that the seam lengths are equal. I'm going to be using a tracing wheel to do that. So this is my tracing wheel. I'm going to start from the front. I'm going to fold my darts. I am folding this way, so the bulk is on the side, but because I'm folding this way for the front, I'm going to do the same thing for the back as well. By trying to fold it like this and your lines do not align, just make sure you redraw them, and then you use your tracing wheel, and then when you open it up, you see the shape of our darts. You see how it's giving me that triangle? This is 1 inch, but for the other one, might not give me that because it's not wide enough. But I'm going to through it anyway. So this one, the line is okay. I don't need to do anything to it. By the time I open it up, you see, the line is okay. It's fine. These are our patterns, both the front and the back. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out this pattern. Like I said, I'm not going to add any sewing allowances to this pattern. I did not add hem allowance either. So by the time I decide whatever skirt I want to sew, if I want to sew this length skirt, then by the time I'm cutting out on fabric, I'm going to add 1/2 inch sewing allowances round the pattern. But this is on fold, so you do not need to add allowance to this one. When we're ready to sew the skirt and we're cutting out the pattern, I'll show you what to do. So this is our pencil skirt patterns all done. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to cut out this pattern, and then I'll show you what it looks like. So for the back, do not forget to connect your waist circumference measurement to your hip line. I forgot to do that, so just remember to do that. So I'm just going to connect and then I'll cut it out. So for the skirt, I'm just going to draw across because I'm going to be cutting out this. I'm going to draw it straight across into the zipper allowance. This is our pencil skirt pattern all done. This is the front and then this is the back. Would you be trying out this skirt pattern? Let me know in the comment section. Please subscribe if you've not done so already. Give me a thumbs up, like, comment, share. Hope this tutorial was helpful. If you have any questions or suggestions, I'll be in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. See you in my next tutorial. Take care and God bless.